Well, hello again. I'm Dean Jones with RealLogic Sotheby's International Realty, and this is Market Perspectives. We have a very special guest here today. We have Kirsten Ring Murray of Olson Kundig right here in downtown Seattle. Kirsten, thanks so much for being on the show with me.
Great to see you.
You have so many acronyms behind your name. Give us a little bit about your background and your pedigree here at the firm.
Sure. Well, first of all, I'm a bit of an old timer here. I started actually fairly soon after my education. I've been here about 35 years, and I started as a young architect in what was a pretty small firm, about 10 people at the time, but certainly a really interesting time to be at the firm. We had, Jim Olson had just started getting, really interesting commissions. It was really, I think, an interesting transition point in the firm,
right,
where a lot of things were happening, and I've had a chance to see a lot of things evolve over the years.
So the OG would be one of them for you, right? As you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
And so you're a partner and also very much practicing in the firm. And I was really moved by a quote. We're here in the Washington Shoe Building, late 1800s nostalgia. And there's a great quote in the lobby from Arthur Miller. And he said, "I have tried to make a good pair of shoes. There is some value in that. You haven't tried. You have succeeded at making great buildings and great spaces." What do you think is the story to such distinction for your brand and the products that you deliver?
Well, I think that quote's really interesting because in a way it's a very humble and understated quote. And I think a lot of what I've enjoyed about the practice, what drew me to the practice in the very beginning, was this kind of real focus on just doing the work, doing the best work you possibly can, and without a lot of motivation in terms of having a goal or having a particular market aspiration necessarily. It was just really I think coming into Seattle, coming into the firm in the late 80s, early 90s, it was just this amazing time where there was a history of craft, there was a real culture of building. I think there was a real focused, kind of humble pursuit of just doing really interesting work, trying to innovate, trying to tap into so many of the skills and qualities that were kind of inherent in the environment here in Seattle at the time. I think Seattle has always been this kind of quiet place with amazing innovation.
Well, I appreciate the lack of drive it and punched windows. Thank you. I mean, clearly the quality, is transcended throughout all of your work as a firm itself. And then you use the word environment. It's safe to say that you have built in some of the most sensitive environments, both politically as well as, geographically, with a real sense of space and place, both indoor and outdoor. Walk us through that.
Well, I do think it's interesting. I mean, starting again as a regional firm, now we're really a global firm, but really the origins of the practice here in Seattle, I think that the environment is just a really key part of it. Most of there aren't very many easy construction sites in the Pacific Northwest. We have sensitive environments. We have, in some cases, very challenging soils. We have a lot of interesting environmental conditions and also just a beautiful natural setting that you're always trying to maximize. So I think that's the core of our practice has to do with that kind of trying to quietly understand all the issues and aspects of a design. And I think out of that has come, an interesting methodology about how to really look at the site, look at what you're trying to do, look at how to optimize an environment. And I think once you have those ideas, which are so clearly, I think, derived from practicing in our region, you start to take those to other climates and other places in the world. I think you can achieve similar things. But that really is at the core of what we try to do, is really think of the building, think of the design of a place in terms of how it is connecting all aspects of the environment together.
I'm responding to a current client of ours at Sage Cliff Resorts, and some of the shoulders that we're standing on there are prior curators of the Gorge, the amphitheater, and some of the development that's gone on there. And famously, it was said, something should be built here, which is almost paradoxical to what you would think from such a beautiful natural setting. Yet you walk around that resort and this has got your signature and Tom Kundig all over it. How would you describe that spirit of place in that setting and the integration with kind of land and space and both interior and exterior?
Well, I mean, I think that particular place is so amazing. And actually, it's quite distinct from being in Western Washington.
I'll say,
In central Washington, I think that was one of the first things, it was just very evident about the project when we went out to explore the site. There's such an amazing, just sculptural land quality. The distant views, the absence of trees, and the sort of presence. I think the predominant natural presence is the ground, is the earth, is the geological forms and material, and the plant material that is very much part of that. And I think moving around that site, the incredible vistas, I think those were some things that were really unique to the site. So it was pretty easy to imagine when you were there what were going to be the important things to really pull out of the site, because it was very much an opportunity to design something that was part of this land, part of this topography.
And I appreciate that so much, because sometimes as an architect or as a wordsmith, we want to stand out and we want to make a statement and say, I am proudly here. And in some cases, being a little more quiet and integrated with the land is like poetry in language, but it's the language of the land. And in walking around Sage Cliff Resort, and you have some new product lines coming there with the vineyard homes and the condominiums that are going to be offered now at the casitas. They're integrated. You almost don't notice that they're there, sort of tucked into the hill.
One of the earliest things that really was apparent in the brief, that this was a project that really wanted to be of its place.
Yes.
And I think if you look at some of the first buildings we did there that were now, we referred to them at the time as the casitas, but now are the homes being offered. The rock that you see on those walls came from the site. It was gathered by workers on that land who were otherwise working in the vineyards. It was the concrete that became embedded in precast panels was fabricated within that area. The timber, the glulam beams were all of these things were coming. They were very localized, and that was a really important part of the brief, not only aesthetically to connect it to the land, but also just in terms of its ethos, to be a project that harnessed the innovation and the work, the skills, the talent of people that were living and working in that part of the state. So that was a really important part of it to us.
Yeah, it's so successfully done, and it's fun to see all the expansion now with the vision there. And that Cliff Club is extraordinary. Walk us through the composition of that general design and some of the specs.
The Cliff Club, the proposed Cliff Club, we're really seeing that. And again, I think what has happened over the years is that we've gone from, there's a certain language to the original buildings we built there, and that has really evolved into some kind of a broader language. But this is going to be a project that really does integrate. You can almost think of it as a straight line against this really dramatic topography. This is a project that you're going to be able to come in and kind of an upper level and get a tremendous view into the gorge, and then kind of descend down into lower levels where there'll be hospitality, wine, and also offering you views of performances, indoor-outdoor connections, so that you have the ability to really, this will be just a sheltering space that allows you to experience the property in all of its variety.
Yeah, it is going to be an incredible destination for private events, and obviously the Live Nation concerts and all that's being explored between the resort and that independent business. But it just goes to show how great, art and design can kind of commingle. And looking at some of the other accomplishments, I will call them, the body of work that Olson Kundig and many of your architects have produced, we've been able to represent and sell very successfully, I will say, numerous properties. One that comes to mind early on for us is the studio house, and I believe that was Tom Kundig's
That was Tom Kundig.
first commission.
I would say it was kind of a seminal work.
Okay.
He had done probably some other commissions, but as a younger architect here, and I was here at the time that was happening. I was a really younger architect. That was just a really important commission where it really became an opportunity for him to really, express this design, working very closely with the client. And it was a very different project. It was very. It
inspired also the Meg home on Queen Anne, which we also recently sold off market. Moyer Hawley had that sale again, and it was kind of a fun story because she was sought after privately off market, having brought other buyers to Tom Kundig properties, and just thinking, well, where there's one, there may be others, and it turned out there was. We found a nice buyer off market for that record-setting home on Queen Anne.
Yeah, it's an incredible project. And I think what's so interesting, I mean, sometimes these commissions are very personal projects for the initial owner that commissions the project. So they have a very individual personality, but oftentimes I think that in that process, they sort of unlock the potential of the site and the place so well that they become, in many cases, sort of universally appealing to another client. Something that, almost helps you discover the place when you're in this building.
I can imagine. I mean, that work would inspire other commissions or commissions, if you will, because there is a look and aesthetic there. When I want to build a home, I come into Olson Kundig and chat with you or Tom or any of the other architects here. Are they coming for a specific look and aesthetic, or is it more the approach that you take with them that pulls from them something in line with prior work, but much more personalized to them individually?
I think that it's both. Okay. I mean, people typically come to us, and in fact, we have a website, and it's actually quite easy to find projects and talk about what you like. But I think we always try to not take that too literally, because each project is unique. And now, again, we're working with clients all over the world. So it's, some of it is the things that they're interested in, the things they've seen, the things they can imagine. And usually they might be pointing at a project that we've done or something. And then there's the discovery along the process that we're coming up with, working together. I mean, when we're working in, again, various regions or areas or communities, we're looking for, what is the craft like here? What are the materials that are really interesting to work with here? What's the particular site condition of this project, and how might that, evolve into something different? So I think you'll see across our portfolio, I think you see some consistent, you see some threads that connect it, but I think we also, and we'll say this to clients, you won't necessarily see us doing the same thing twice. You'll see that there's a broad range of designs here, and that in many ways is a reflection of our clients and what they're bringing to the table.
I was instantly drawn to your project at 15 Lake Street, which is now our headquarters for Realogic Sotheby's International Realty. I was just there this morning, and the oversized garage doors, a lot of the exposed mechanical and steel beams and posts, and it just feels great. It's a museum that we get to work in.
Yeah, that was a project of mine a number of years ago, and I think coming into that project, it was a existing building that had been, I guess, it had a life, right? It had some chapters, and it was a bit of a mess, right? Let's face it. So I think that was a fun type of project to go in and really really reduce it back to its essence, and then its simple shape, its simple form, and then introduce kind of a language of parts and pieces that would allow the building to have a new use. We really wanted to activate the street front,
the thoroughfare from the top level down to the marina level,
and connect through. It's
to exactly
the
what it
level.
is, and it's turned into a lifestyle center. And we like to think it's the Times Square of Kirkland. But it fronts our business, and that's a lot of how we view our role as creating great environments for our brokers and their clients to celebrate, mix and mingle, and collaborate. And it's no surprise that was another one of your products. Looking at some other recent success stories, another one of our brokers, Jay Kipp, had great success at One Carillon Point, which I know is aged beautifully, but it has to be one of the first condominium estates.
I think so.
Larger
and
format.
That was one of the very first projects I got to help Jim on when I came into the office. It was just kind of in schematic design, and I think it was such an amazing project because it was, I think it's one big idea, right? It has a relationship that is consistent throughout, but there were so many really developed to take perfect advantage of every little bit of the site, whether it was, regardless of which floor you were on, if you were to the north or the south, what particular views. It really became I think it was very much like designing a very interesting custom home, but thinking about it in terms of, being a home for multiple families. And then we got to work over the years, we've gotten to do quite a number of the interiors of those projects too. And each one is incredibly personalized and special and evolves.
Well, and there's space because as we age, looking for single level, lock and leave type residences, but you want 3,000 or 4,000 square feet. You want the grandkids to come visit. You want a large veranda or terrace, but in new high-rise design and in multifamily design, you don't see that often. Another great listing that is currently unencumbered by offers, should you be interested, is another Jim Olson at 87 Virginia. I believe it's billed as the only for-sale residence within Pike Place market. What are your thoughts on that property?
That is such an incredible building. In fact, that was a building that when I came to town as a young architect, it was something that I saw and what led me to the firm. It's such a unique building in terms of it was one of the first new buildings being built in the market, yet in its sort of structure and expression, it was very much captured the essence of the sort of the concrete structural frame expressed building. It was a very important building, actually, architecturally for the firm. It was globally published, so that was really interesting. It was a property, too, that I think was very near and dear to Jim's heart. He was one of the developers and actually resided in the penthouse for a number of years. Right. I think he still owns a little storefront in there. So it was a real labor of love. And I think it really takes on what's so interesting about that property, and I've had a chance to work on we've had a chance to come in and renovate and do some units within the building over the years. And what's so interesting is that there's this framework, this overall design of the building that just is so fit perfectly to the site. But within it, the individual homes can be so unique. And over the years, I mean, you can see some things have bumped out, some things have pulled back in. People have been able to sort of personalize and evolve the building. There's a wonderful, waffle slab language to the structure that most people get a chance to sort of expose and express in the building. And it has really, unique and interesting views, but a lot of outdoor living in those homes too. So it's really... And it has this wonderful moderate scale. I think you get to know people in the building, and everyone's always interesting. It's really a property like none other. Quite different than maybe the newer towers that were built years after that.
Well, and I think you can tell the era that some of these buildings were built in, and for whatever reason, you likely know the answer. Jim Olson, Tom Kundig, your body of work, they're timeless. The structures, maybe it's that the cities in some cases in these areas are shaped around the buildings that you've placed so well there, but they just don't ever seem to stand out as aging. And, they have such a distinct stamp, I would say, from your brand.
Well, I think in that particular building, again, there was a real attempt to look closely at the market and what was there, to look at the history of the place and to really... I think it's a very elevated, I mean, some people might say it has an industrial kind of look, but it's a very both elevated and also very hardworking building. There's a lot of authenticity in the building, the ability to see the structure and really understand how it's made. And I think that has sort of a timeless appeal. I think that's really central to our work. And maybe something that as buildings get larger or since that time, actually that building was designed quite a number of years ago. Maybe there have been different explorations in architecture that have, prioritized other things. But we think the sort of intrinsic character of that building is pretty clear. And I think a lot of our work holds that.
100% site. I mean, they're so close, they're throwing fish directly in your window, right?
Yeah.
Right there from the market. Other locations that come to mind, I mean, lonely mountaintops with just a single story structure that is the subject of coffee table books. I mean, how has this firm kind of cornered that market of distinctive architecture in incredible landscapes?
I do think that one consistent factor is we get great clients. And I think that how we define a great client, how we recognize a great client is not necessarily that they want to do something big or they want to do something expensive. It's usually that they want to do something interesting.
Yeah,
I mean,
very
clients
bold.
come to us with really, really smart clients, first of all, usually smarter than we are, but maybe not doing what we do, but with really interesting goals and visions for a place. Usually our clients really love the site that they're thinking about. They intend to really have, many times the buildings, the homes or the buildings are expressions of their values. So it's really, you're in a deep collaboration with someone else, a client who's very smart, who's very creative. And it's out of that, I think, collaboration that some of these things come. But some of our most interesting projects are the smallest projects. If somebody comes to us with an interesting idea or an interesting question, that's going to be a pretty good client for us.
I really respect that. It's the thought per square foot that you put into these homes as opposed to the scale of them. And I think too often, the McMansion comes to mind and, this monument to myself and to all the rooms I think I'm going to use. But the trend seems to be now more curated spaces that are truly livable. And I can't think of too many homes that I would categorize in your portfolio as being, that overstuffed McMansion.
Well, and we've done some large homes, sure. But I think that usually what we're trying to do, even with a larger home, is really break down the scale so that it doesn't feel overwhelming, so that it's livable, that it fits into the site well, that it doesn't really look or feel big. So we have done some of those. But I do think it is really about, we're typically working with a client, I mean, like anything else, somebody comes and they're going to build a custom home. I mean, it's a chance to dream, right? They come in with a long wish list. And I think we're typically working with them to kind of challenge them to maybe build a little less, build a little better. Think about how you can get dual uses out of a space. Think about how a space might benefit from being a little cozier, a little more intimate in some places. So that tends to be a point of view that we try to bring to it. Most of us live in fairly small spaces.
Yeah. And the multi-purpose functionality, harking back to the Cliff Club or even our building at 15 Lake Street, where we have these compartments, if you will, that mixes uses from one day it's retail, then it's, office, and then it's an event center, and then it's a cafe. I mean, it's just, I think really well-designed spaces can work harder for you, especially if you're going to be in a premium location with that rent and, of course, the associated build out.
I think the other thing too, and you'll see us, one of the aspects of our design, sometimes you'll see us working with large scale kinetic elements. You mentioned the large garage door, and that's something that comes about from time to time in our work. And I think one of the things we're always aware of too, and again, going back to the beginning, we live in an amazing natural environment. People in the Northwest, and I think we would say people, no matter where you live, should be spending more time outside. And we spend a lot of time thinking about that space that's in between the indoors and the outdoors and giving it some structure, giving it some comfort. And that allows you to sort of expand space without necessarily having a big bunch of, building area to cool and heat and, big rambling spaces. But spaces that are clever, spaces that engage the outdoors and help you kind of expand your experience that way.
Trick the eye. I mean, I see that in so much of your work where you've blurred the line between interior and exterior and very low clearance ceiling planes and floors that just before you know it, you're outside. It's like an extension of your living room. And some of those extensions are phenomenal. I mean, the views and the mountains and the waterways that you've built along. And that brings me back to the gorge and, the Columbia River Basin. I mean, one of the most unique landscapes anywhere in North America. And we have a limited collection of homes that will be now selling there for collectors of property that would like to put those into a rental opportunity. And you're building new construction vineyard homes there.
Well, I think initially the homes that are coming for sale now, those original ones, that was very much seen as an inn, a very, a small series of boutique. Each of those homes are really interesting in that they were very specifically set into the landscape. And, we went out and staked out each corner and turned them to each particular view. And it was always going to be a very small collection of buildings. So I think that is special in that way. By the owner at the time, that was a complete experiment to see if anybody would go, if anybody would come out and, spend time there or and it became so popular that I think, in fact, difficult to access really because of the popularity of the events and the gorge and its programming and things. So the desire to expand and provide more housing types and to get into something that we do a lot with projects that has been, utilized in some of these other homes there. We're trying to come up with designs that can be a little more affordable, a little bit more prefabricated, or have a certain sort of ingenuity about how they're a little less site built and a little bit more responsive to being able to assemble a bunch of buildings on the site.
I would think that you would be wildly popular in building ADUs with this House Bill 1110 throughout Washington State. I mean, there's a lot of backyards that would love to have one of your products in it.
We love doing those types of things. And in fact, we're working on a lot of projects and I think it came from some of the interesting briefs that we get where we're working on remote sites. Like, for instance, we've done probably 50 custom homes that have prefabricated timber construction, kits that we've worked with, Canadian fabricators and things in order to just be able to bring projects to the site more affordably, with better quality, with better construction. It's hard to build in a lot of these landscapes. So we're always trying to be smart and think about how to build with kind of intelligence, elegance, and affordability. So I think that we've explored some different types of products, so to speak, in this property.
It's fascinating. And as you look forward into your portfolio and just the emerging trends that you're seeing within design or even social influences, I mean, what's got you excited about what's next in design and development?
I think that, we're working on a lot of really interesting projects in sites. Again, we're working throughout the world now. We're working in some interesting places. I've got a really interesting project in Telluride, Colorado, Colorado's my home state, actually, where we're building in some very interesting sort of, at this point, challenging sites in a way. Again, that sort of the opportunity of topography, climate, maybe impacts from previous development, and the ability to come together and build really elegant projects that not only make spectacular spaces, but almost heal a site, knit together a community, and really make a place sort of whole and revitalized. I think there's a lot of opportunity in our projects. I love to work on, like your offices, I love to do adaptive reuse, take old buildings and make them new. The building that we're in right now that we're speaking in our
Washington
offices
Shoe Building.
is over 100 years old. And
Sure is.
And still an interesting building and very easy to transform and adapt. So those are really interesting opportunities as well.
Well, and what a success story for you and the legacy of the whole team here at Olson Kundig, and to be in the Washington Shoe Building, slowly taking over floor by floor.
Oh, we have the whole building.
You have the whole building now.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting too. What is your view of downtown Seattle or our U.S. cities and these commercial office spaces? I mean, do you have many accounts looking at doing residential conversions? Do you think they don't make sense?
That is we had an opportunity. Tom and I worked together on a project in West Hollywood that it actually started before COVID, before the pandemic, where we were converting an office building to condominium, in part because it was a 10-story building. It was an incredible opportunity to build a high-rise building in Los Angeles, which you don't have many, through its conversion. And we learned a lot of lessons about doing that there. I think it's a very successful project. It depends upon how the building was set up. Like these old buildings, a lot of these old buildings like we're in now can transform from office to residential quite easily. They were a bit of a blank canvas. And I think that, depending upon the building and how it was set up, it may or may not be, easy to transform. But we're certainly very interested in that, looking at a number of projects in that vein right now. But I also think in terms of Seattle, I feel like, we're in the middle of it right now. One can imagine what, the pandemic brought its challenges, I think, to urban living and to offices. But also there was a lot of waterfront development happening at the same time. And I think it's a little hard to untangle those. What I really see is increasing vitalization. Like you come down here on the weekends and it's crazy. There's just so much going on, and I think the energy is really coming back. And I think we're going to see, revitalized downtown, a revitalized waterfront, and people coming back into the city and looking at what it needs to be now and today. So I think it's a dynamic process. We are here. We've never wanted to leave downtown. That's in fact, we've opened up offices. We have a small office in Manhattan. We have one in Chicago. As sort of cities got more complicated and people lost their confidence in them, we sort of felt this urge to rush into them.
Good for you.
Really just see what's going to happen and try to be part of recatalyzing those spaces.
Well, we will see another cycle here in downtown Seattle, and I would not be surprised if your brand was part of that leading charge. And thank you for your stewardship of all things Seattle. And I mean, what a pride piece that we can share with all of your accomplishments and the body of work with Olson Kundig. Well, with that, Kirsten, thank you so much for joining us on the show this afternoon. And I'm Dean Jones, and this is Market Perspectives. We'll see you next time. Feel free to leave a comment, and we'll see you then.